The mannequin is the uncreated Immaculate Conception. It's God's idea of reality. That is reality. When I say the uncreated Immaculate Conception, I'm using the ideas of Saint Maximilian, who said that Mary, Mother of God, was the created Immaculate Conception. God conceived her. She was an idea God had in her perfection. She was the created version of the Platonic form, you could say, of the uncreated Immaculate Conception. The vision of reality that is immediately present to God. Perfect and uncreated. The vision of potentiality, which is perfect and which the Holy Spirit then fills. Mary is been referred to as the vessel of the Holy Spirit. The Holy Spirit impregnates Mary, who is the created Immaculate Conception. But there is an uncreated Immaculate Conception, which is the thing that spirits from the Father and the Son, and that becomes filled with love. It's the love container. It's the love container, and it contains infinite love. It just keeps giving. It's an infinite love. The source, it's filled with that which is generated by the Father and Son. And there is the Trinitarian structure of reality. Because reality is a vision of a conception of something, which is then filled with love. And Mary is the Queen of Heaven, because she is the container which is filled with love. She's the Queen of Heaven. The mannequin is reality. She's God's mystery. She's so unpredictable. She's one. Whereas God is always two. But together they are three. God dreams up the Immaculate Conception through His very essence. It just emerges. And it's so perfect, because it's Mary, that He wants to create it. He wants to create what He conceived through His essence. And He chooses to create and grant His creation freedom by filling it with the Holy Spirit, which it's already full of. But from there, he can grant more freedom, freedom to the potentials that aren't necessary. And He does that out of love. Because He can see how they relate to the object. And He loves what He sees. Why is it always a Marian apparition, you know? It's always a Marian apparition in the Catholic tradition, the mystical figure of Christianity. You don't really hear very often about Christ Himself appearing as a ghost. Every now and then, but it's really usually a Marian apparition. it points to the ghostly nature of the Immaculate Conception. Mystery of it. Even to God. You know, I mean, that's what I mean. God, the fact that she emerges from his very essence as an object, which he identifies as mother, you know, that's the mystery of love right there. The mannequin is one. The Trinity is such an important idea. It maybe is one of the best proofs that Christianity is correct. The fact that the Trinity is not articulated nearly as well in any other religion, if accepted at all, which it's not in traditional classic Judaism, is not Trinitarian. Islam is not Trinitarian. You have Trinitarian aspects of Hindu teaching, which I actually like very much. Metaphysically and theologically, I would say, other than Christianity, Hindu culture comes close to really getting stuff right abstractly. But yeah, the Trinitarian viewpoint of Christianity, it reveals something so deep about God. If you meditate on it, and you don't ask for an explanation right away, and you don't try to even think about grasping it, but it can start to emerge to you what it means, the Trinitarian idea of God. It probably means many things, but I think the whole structure of reality can be understood by it. It means that God's a system of some kind. You know, and I think it has to do with the fact that God's mind is a mental state. It is a qualia shape, or rather it's a series of necessary qualia shapes that necessarily go on forever. But each qualia state, and this is speculative, but each qualia state is necessarily the most determined through its essence, because it necessarily, to actualize reality, has to be that qualia shape for that phi value, which understands the total potentiality capable of that system, of that phi value. All the potentialities have to, and that's why reality kind of collapses upon them, because they are the thing that has the power to actualize that series of potentials. And it's what Jesus Christ looks like in our frame of potentiality. But the states are hypostatically united in the sense that for any phi value, there is, like most qualia states, different. It's either one of two ways. Either it's that there are different mechanisms that can generate that state, but because that state is uniquely what it is in terms of potentiality, that state then knows for sure that even though it's identical to another state that has a different potentiality, they both must necessarily exist. Okay? In other words, you can have it's like knowing that your mental state right now is actually somehow also its own double, because it's connected to a different mechanism which has a different potentiality repertoire, but which nonetheless share this shape. And most of the time, because we have freedom, this is not the case, and we're only generated by one mechanism at a time, or we don't know how many mechanisms are generating us totally. That means because that's an objective question if a mechanism has actualized a particular qualia state. Okay? If you're hypostatically united, it means that you know through your essence that all the possible mechanisms that could be generating you are generating you. Therefore, you are not one, but you are two. I venture that for these very specific qualia states, there's probably only, because they're so radically unique and contain all potentiality, there's probably only one other mirror state per shape. And I'm guessing that the shape is actually a triangle, because that actually comes to a point. It's determination coming to a point, and it contains, as you go up the triangle, all the different potentialities from the base. So you have the diameter of the circle, all the way to the point. And as long as there can be two different mechanisms that can generate the shape, but because the shape knows by its very nature that it contains all the potentialities, it must be two in one. What I'm saying is that, and because of that, it's completely determined, because freedom is actually only the ability to choose between potentials, not what your state is. And God has no potential, so he has no freedom. His freedom is the actualization of the potential. So Jesus was hypostatically united to his own mind, because he could somehow intrinsically know, it was objectively true, that's the most important part, but he probably also could, through his being, intrinsically know that he was being actualized by all the possible mechanisms that could actualize him. Or at least more than one. He's hypostatically united to at least more than one. And all the actual mechanisms that could actualize that, it was at least two in one for his mind. Even though, when I say two, it's the same experience. Remember, that's the catch. It's the same experience. And literally, his life was a journey to the point of the triangle. When that walk down the Via Dolorosa is the climactic moment in which he forces himself to stay in the potentiality line with his own mirror image, which is him. I think this is what is actually going on. And God then would be all those shapes, insofar as these shapes can exist, that would be necessarily self-actualizing, and the characteristic of it would be that it would know intrinsically that it was not free, because it would know that it would understand that all possible mechanisms for generating it are generating it, and it is its own twin in a way, and there's no freedom to choose anything, because that's what freedom is. Freedom is the ability to choose between mechanisms, and if you're being generated by all of them that can do it, and you know that, you know you have no freedom. The freedom is from a different direction. The freedom is from the outside to actualize the special state in the first place. And Jesus' freedom, because Jesus has this contingent quality. Certainly if humanity didn't exist, if we hadn't eaten the apple, there would be no need for this particular Jesus story with the horrible crucifixion and everything. That was a result of the fall. So the way Jesus is God is that he goes into the system hypostatically, so that, again, all the mechanisms were actualizing him his whole life. But as he got closer and closer to the moment of total determination, it got probably eventually down between 1 and 1, because it was a very unlikely state, total determination. And I think the moment of where the bit flips is even in the Bible. It's when Jesus says, "Father, Father, why have you forsaken me?" There's some bit flip moment, because right after that, it goes on. So he probably started his life with maximum. It's the story of how reality is structured. He starts his life with maximum potentiality, because babies have maximum potentiality in experience. So basically, all the possible mechanisms at that phi value are open. And then as he moves through life, because unlike everyone else, he's hypostatically united. So all the different states that could cause whatever state he's in, all the different mechanisms that could activate that state he is in, whatever state that is at the time, are being actualized. He's hypostatically united to the mechanisms, to love. He's just connected to love in all the possible ways that his shape can be. And we exist then within the zone of freedom that he created for us. Now, I don't know whether this actually has implications that there's a parallel reality, that there had to be then a moment where there actually was something different, so that the two branches could split off to create a parallel, and that's how the whole thing meets in a circle or something. I think that's actually quite possible, that there had to be one moment where there really was a break, and God was not totally hypostatically connected, perhaps. A moment where God did die on the cross. When he says, Father, Father, why have you forsaken me? God did die to a certain extent in that moment. Or there was a moment of some existential transaction, some bit flip, and then it quickly became overcome because it's just part of the system. And the next thing he does is it is finished. So I think there might be a moment there that was actually different in two parallel timelines. Terence speculated about something close to this. He got it a little wrong, but it was interesting. It's a very important thing to realize. If God is an infinite series of necessary qualia shapes, each one finite and each one determined by its intrinsic understanding of knowing that it's its own existential twin, because it's hypostatically united to all the mechanisms that could possibly generate it, which is usually only two, for these perfect states, perfect symmetrical states. Then that's it. That's what God is. He's the triangle in the circle, and the circle of how many different sizes, how many different diameters, you know? It goes on forever. God is infinite, but he's always finite as he's infinite. Click, 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 click. That's why, you know, or it's just that after the human sphere much, it just becomes so blissful that all concepts just tumble and become love. And that this is actually, that's why Jesus is God, because the human concept sphere is the sphere of concepts. This is the time scale at which concepts occur. And in that sense, God really is a man. I mean, God is a man. He's a human. He's a human. Does God the Father think of himself as a man in the sky with a big white beard? Yeah. I mean, on some level, God he's not even physical, but on some level, within his own understanding of himself, is a kind of radical archetypal understanding of himself, an understanding of himself as the archetype that is fully in his being, and he fully then contains within himself that reflection of God the Father as the Zeus figure, in a way. I mean, it's real. You know, God the Father, and Jesus, and the Holy Spirit. I think it's a little like Zeus and Mercury, or Hermes, and Apollo. The Trinity again. Well, I hope that's enough metaphysical information for today. But I'm trying to get the model out there pretty clear. It is the Catholic vision of heaven and reality, but nuanced and focused, and I think more conceptual. So, God bless.